Our devotional moment for today is coming out of 1 Corinthians chapter 2. The key verses that we're going to highlight are verses 1 through 5, as well as verses 11 through 14. Key terms we're going to discuss will be hyperochē, sophia, and pneuma. Our main idea for today is the Spirit speaks louder than actions or words. The Spirit speaks louder than actions or words. I'm sure many of us have heard of the idiom, actions speak louder than words. And fundamentally, it really just emphasizes what we do is more important than what we say. What we do really shows, and tells the story of our intentions, our motives, not necessarily what we say. But I would take it a step further that even our actions, sometimes are out of place. They are misdirected. And so I wanted to emphasize even more that we need help, not only with what we say, but also with our actions. And that is where I believe the Spirit of God comes in. As I was looking at chapter 2 of 1 Corinthians, Paul continues with his plea, and he continues to admonish those that are at Corinth to really change their mentality, to be united, to come together and align with one another and put away the discord and all of the strife, the hostility that they have been experiencing. And so he really opens up this second chapter, and he says, "And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom," with lofty speech or wisdom. The word lofty is translated from the Greek word hyperochē, which speaks of really superiority. It speaks of excellency. It's a state of high rank or position, with implications in some contexts of being too high or excessive. It's a high status, and really relative to the context, it was high speech. It was this pompous rhetoric, which was common in that day. In Corinth, you would have these debates. Paul calls out, the debates. He calls out the scribes. You would have these great orators, and they would, they just had a serious vocabulary. They had a broad range of vocabulary, and really they tried to woo people with this persuasive rhetoric. And that was, that's how they looked to get things done. That's how they looked to move people. It was through this persuasive speech. And Paul makes it clear, I did not approach you with that technique. That was not my approach. And he says in verse number 4, "And my speech and my message, it was not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power." When he talks about that lofty speech or wisdom translated from the Greek word sophia. And when we think about sophisticated, it's normally a person that you would consider, smart, intelligent. But the reality is, it's really limited to worldliness. Being sophisticated is really in terms of worldly wisdom, knowing how to maneuver and navigate life based on experiences in the world. And certainly that's not Paul's aim. It's not to promote any worldly wisdom, any wisdom that's come from man. And so he makes it clear, I did not come to you with that type of language, plausible, lofty, excellent, smooth words. But he says, in contrast, in demonstration of the Spirit and of power. Spirit translated from the Greek word pneuma. And we have to understand that pneuma is a term that occurs quite frequently in the New Testament. It occurs 379 times. And it occurs the most in terms of books of the Bible in the book of Acts, which should be no surprise, but it occurs 70 times in the book of Acts. And of course, when we think about Pentecost and the inauguration of the church, the Holy Spirit falling and being given at Pentecost. And so pneuma is seen 70 times in the book of Acts. But the second, the most occurrences in terms of books of the Bible is 1 Corinthians. And it appears 40 times in 1 Corinthians, 9 times in chapter 2 alone. And so Paul is putting emphasis on the Spirit. But we have to understand that he uses different aspects, different entries in terms of his usage of pneuma. And we can see that if we go down to verse number 12, he says, now we have received not the spirit of the world. So he's distinguishing spirits here. We have not received the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God. The Spirit who is from God. The Spirit is a person. The Spirit is God. God and the Spirit are one. And he says that we might understand the things freely given us by God. 13, and we impart this in words not taught by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual truths to those who are spiritual. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him. Again, we looked at that word folly, moria. It's a ridiculous idea, a thought to the natural person, the person that is coming to ruins. And he is not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. And so Paul here, he talks about really the spirit of the world, the spirit of the world. And he talks about the spirit of man. And really these are in contrast with the divine spirit, with the Spirit of God. And so we have to understand, Paul understands that there's this spiritual battle between the spirit of man, the spirit of the world, and the Spirit of God. But Paul is projecting and he's really promoting God's Spirit, the Spirit of God. And he says, that is what I came to you with, the Spirit of God, and with power, demonstrating the power of God. And so that is Paul's emphasis. That's his stance. It's the dunamis that the Spirit has given us. It's the characteristic power. It's the ability, right? It's our capability to function given to us by the Spirit of God. Our effectiveness, our greatest effectiveness is by the Spirit of God. And so Paul is saying, I did not come with some mastery of speech, some sophisticated language. I did not come with any self-dependence, no self-aggrandizement. It's really all about the Spirit of God. And he's trying to get us to understand that we should not rely on ourselves. We should not depend on our own personal, natural knowledge and wisdom, but we have to lean and trust and depend on the Spirit of God. He says, for that is our teacher, that is our discerner. The Spirit knows and searches all things, even the deep things of God. The Spirit is what gives us revelation. He is the one that teaches us. He is the one that speaks to us. He is the one that guides us. It's the Spirit of God. And so that's what we have to understand. And that's really what we're sharing with you on today, that we have to allow the Spirit to speak. Our natural man speaks too much. Our opinions, our ideologies sometimes are surface too much. But I want you to understand that the Spirit speaks louder than actions or words. Whatever effort you think you can put forward, whatever word, speech you think you can project, I'm here to tell you that the Spirit is more capable that the Spirit has more to offer than anything that we can render from a natural standpoint. And I'm closing with this. I want you to consider this pneuma. You may be familiar with pneumatic. It's really in terms of machinery or objects that are operated by wind or air. And I was thinking about Hurricane Beryl. I mean, really, that's pneuma. It's water and it's wind. Tornadoes. That's pneuma. It's wind, right? And when we think about Beryl, despite all of the news, platforms and articles that's tried to warn people, that's talked about the hurricane, we try to categorize it. We try to explain some of the actions that can take place. Nothing speaks louder than the storm itself. When that hurricane, as it's sweeping through the nation, its impact is seen most in and of itself. That storm, that hurricane speaks louder than any news anchor can try to explain, than any action that we would try to estimate. That spirit speaks the loudest, or that storm speaks the loudest for itself. And that's what we have to understand. And that's just what I want you to see, that the Spirit speaks loud. It does not need help. We just need to yield to it. We have to surrender to the Spirit of God. And we have to allow the Spirit to prove its power working through us. The miracles, the signs, the wonders, the manifestations that we all desire, most of the time, it's our natural man that gets in the way of what the Spirit is trying to do. So I would just admonish us to really yield to the Spirit, because the Spirit speaks louder than any actions or any words that we can put forth. So we should let God do the work. Let the Spirit speak for itself. God bless you. Join us again tomorrow for another devotion.